say minorities, I guess because Shad Khan is theoretically a minority. But Skip, you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Until leadership gets more diverse, you're not going to have a more diverse hiring background. Skip, this is what's puzzling to me, is that Eric Bieniemy has the exact job that Matt Nagy had. Matt Nagy didn't call plays. Andy Reid called plays. Matt Nagy got the job. Doug Peterson didn't call plays.
True.
Andy Reid called the plays.
Yep.
And, Ron Rivera was on the staff, but Ron Rivera was not the defensive coordinator in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
He became a D coordinator, Skip, once he got to, he was the D coordinator in Chicago.
He was.
In San Diego.
Yep.
But these guys that's getting these jobs, like with Andy Reid's coaching tree, Eric Bieniemy has the exact same job that Matt Nagy and Doug Peterson has. Mm. And he's not getting an opportunity. Skip, it's spirit. But I don't really think that they go into it unless you incentivize this. Okay, if you hire a minority, Skip, maybe you'll have an extra $3 to $5 million in cap space. That's the only thing that resonates with these owners. Because I get it, Skip. If I spend $3 billion, let's just say I spend $3 billion for a restaurant, you're not going to tell me what the hell I need to cook. I'm going to cook whatever I want to cook in there. And that's how they look at it. Jerry Jones says, I spent money for this. This is mine. You're not going to tell me who I should hire. And I get it, Skip, but this notion that, and he brought Marvin Lewis. Skip, they weren't going to hire Marvin Lewis. He brought him in to do that situation. The same with the Giants. The Giants, I think they had Eric Bieniemy in. They hire Joe Judge.
Chris Richard.
Chris Richard.
Yeah.
So now we're down to one vacancy. Cleveland. If I'm Eric Bieniemy, I'm turning that one down. Because I already know I ain't going to get no fair shake on that one, Skip.
Well, he already interviewed there, so.
Oh, he would. No. You take my name off the list.
Yeah, and Robert Saleh.
Oh, true.
Skip, take my name off the list. Because you're going to get at max, you get 2.5 years, if you're lucky. Because that seems to be the stat. That's all Jimmy Haslam can stomach. Now, if you look at it, Skip, they keep these, if you look at Mike Pettin, you look at all the guys that he've had, and these guys have had, I think Hugh Jackson stayed the longest at 2.5 years, but everybody else has been 2 years or less.
He was only 2.5.
2.5.
Feels like it was longer than
But you get these other guys. You get Freddie Kitchens, and you look at Patton, and you look at I forget the Chudzinski. Skip all these guys 1 year. The Giants say Cleveland. Now they the Cleveland of the North. This Skip, the Rooney Rule's a joke. I mean, the spirit of law, I get it. Minority. It's kind of like an affirmative action thing, Skip. But affirmative action, Skip, I guess it's federal dollars, and you're not going to get the money if you don't do this. The NFL is a private entity. So what can you do? What can you, Skip, what can the NFL do? Nothing.
So, I have been tracking this for a long time because one of my best friends is John Wooten, who is now the retired leader of the Fritz Pollard Alliance, and he was the driving force behind instituting the Rooney Rule as a hiring practice in the National Football League. And John's point from the start was, I just need interviews. Because if a young assistant coach gets interviewed a couple of times, it gets reported and his name gets out there.
Right.
And if another owner sees that name enough over maybe a couple of years hiring cycles, maybe an owner says, gee, that guy, he's getting a lot of interviews. Maybe I should bring it in. Maybe I should be more open-minded to him.
But it's a blessing and a curse, because if I get a lot of interviews and I'm not getting hired, what's wrong? Why isn't he getting hired?
Okay, I agree with that. But John's point in the end was, I'd rather have interviews than not have interviews. Okay. So let's go back to the stat that I used last week, the Institute of Diversity and Ethics in Sports, 2019 racial and gender report card for the National Football League. The league got actually an A+ for hiring of color assistant coaches.
Right.
A+.
Right.
Oh, that's progress, right? It got a D+ for hiring head coaches of color.
Right.
Wait, A+ assistants, D+ head coaches. There's a big disconnect there, and it shows you that owners are fine. Oh, hire 2 or 3 black assistant coaches. We're fine with that, but nope, I don't want the head coach to be black, right?
I equate this to the restaurant. Oh, you can cook. You can be in the back of but the chef, nah, you can't be the face of the franchise. Now, bro, hold up now.
Okay, so when I texted back and forth last week, and I used this last week with John Wooten, who's just beside himself now, he is devastated by this development. His point was that only one GM, Chris Greer in Miami, as you point out, is, to use John's word, heartbreaking, because it could start with the GM.
Right.
A black GM of color could be more open-minded to say to the owner, hey, listen, this guy is really good. Bring him in. Let me introduce him to you, right?
Right.
The conduit to the owner could be stronger if you have, I don't know, 6 or 8 black GMs, right? We've had them around the league before, but all of a sudden there's a dearth of those too.
Ray Farmer was in Cleveland. He's gone. Rick Smith, who I know very well, started with me in Denver. He interviewed for the in Washington job, but Daniel Snyder said, you know, head coach is going to be a head coach base, and we'll hire the general manager after. Very Washington-like, who hired the head coach and then wait till after the draft to hire the general manager. But go ahead, Skip.
Okay, so sometimes there is groupthink or sheepthink among the owners because in the end, they do want to win.
Right.
And if they're looking around the league and that black head coach is really successful, they say, well, I want one of those, man. I want to go that direction.
Right.
Well, there was one black head coach who started to have success late in the year, and he happened to be allied with Chris Greer in Miami, and that's Brian Flores off the Patriots staff.
Okay.
Well, they started out all-time bad for about, what, 7 games?
59-0, 59-7 opening
horrendous. And then they basically, it felt like they turned the whole roster upside down, which they needed to do. And then all of a sudden, the last 9 games, they go 5-4. They upset the Eagles, and then they went up to Foxborough and just basically ended the season, I thought, for the New England Patriots.
2 playoff teams.
Right? Okay? So all of a sudden, Brian Flores, with the help of Chris Greer, they're having big success. It looks like it's headed in the right direction.
It does.
But it wasn't enough of a splash to create momentum through the hiring process, right? Because John Wooten, again, texted me back with so many names. He said, we have so many in the pipeline who are ready. And he started with Eric Bieniemy and Chris Richard. I think Chris Richard, I know they had a bad year on defense, but when I watch him interviewed, when I watch his body language, he's a stud, man. He's got CEO written all over him. He looks like a commanding officer to me.
And, Skip, there's not enough black head coaches, Skip, because if you look at Mike McCarthy gets the job, he hires the guy that gave him his opportunity as a coordinator 15 years ago. So you see the circle, Skip, and once you become a head coach, what do? You go to the combine, you go to St. meeting, and yada, 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 and the connect, boom, 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 boom. Right. So if I'm not in that loop, how do I get in that loop? Because, Skip, I read a stat. They said 80% of the jobs are never posted. So in other words, people get hired through somebody they know, a friend or a family member. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
80% of jobs.
And therein lies the rub.
Okay, it does. So to finish John Wooten's list of pipeline candidates, Bieniemy, Chris Richard, Robert Saleh, he threw Jim Caldwell on his list because Jim Caldwell was highly successful.
Skip, Jim Caldwell lost his job going 9-7. And in 2 years, Matt Patricia has 9 total wins. And he still got a job. Now,
Jim Caldwell still doesn't have another job.
In 4 years, he went to the playoffs twice. In the last year, he went 9-7. And they said, well, you know, we need to move in a different direction. And the guy that you replaced him with has yet to win 9 total games in 2 years, but he's still on the clock.
Okay. Steve Wilkes got one shot, one time, 1 year in Arizona, and he was gone. He's now the defensive coordinator in Cleveland, which probably didn't help his cause this year that much, but I don't hear his name in Cleveland right on the list. And then there's Terrell Austin, who's a young potential star coach, and John Wooten ended his list with Marvin Lewis, who he thinks deserves a second shot. Okay, so Jerry Jones did